Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to the Planning, Development, and Housing Committee meeting. I want to call the meeting to order. We have committee members who are here, our Councilwoman Rosardo, uh, Councilwoman Rossetti, Councilman Sanchez, Councilwoman Bermudez, Councilman Mitchum, and Councilman John Gale. And my name is Shirley Surgeon, and I am the chair of the committee. Tonight, we only have one item on the agenda, and that item is a proposed item on ordinance amending Chapter 22, Article 2, Division 5 to increase commercial non-residential parking lot licensing fees and to add commercial non-residential parking garage to the licensing requirement of the Hartford Municipal Code. The item was a substitute item number 19 on the December 14th, 2020 City Council agenda. There was a hearing on the item on this ordinance on Monday, November 16th. We have lots of guests with us this evening. Let me also introduce some of the members of the administration. I think I saw our development director, Charles Matthews. I'm not sure if our esteemed council attorney is on the line, on with us. We also have Councilman Nick LeBron, who's also joined us. Yes, we do have our attorney, Rick Ken, is also on the here at the committee meeting. So we have several speakers this evening that would like to address the committee. First, we will have Councilman John Gale, who is going to introduce our first invited guest. After our first invited guest, then we will have Tony Shirales, and then I have about 8 or 9 speakers who would have about 3 minutes to do their presentation to the committee. Councilman Gale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good evening to everyone. This is a rather auspicious day in many respects, and happy Three Kings Day to everyone. On a little bit of a brighter note, would certainly hope that events down in Washington calm down and common sense prevails. This evening, though, to the matter of city business, we have an ordinance that seeks to increase the city's parking fees, which haven't been increased for 18 years. And in part, this is the second time this matter has been before this committee, and we've discussed at length at different times some of the rationale behind the changes. One of those rationales is to just discuss what has been the effect over the last 30 years, 40 years of a dramatic increase in parking lots in the downtown region. And right within Connecticut here, it turns out we have someone who's rather an expert at this and who's graciously agreed to make a presentation to us to give us some perspective on cities and parking. And that's Dr. Norman Garrick from the University of Connecticut. And so it's my pleasure to turn this meeting over at this time to Dr. Garrick. Thank you, sir.
I believe Dr. Garrick is going to share his screen. I hope everybody sees it. Great.
Just 1 second. I've never learned how to do this quickly. Okay, thank you very much. It's really an honor to address this group. I've given talks like this about parking and other transportation issues around the country, but it's doubly special, and it actually makes me nervous to be speaking to a hometown audience, to an audience in a city in which I lived for 15 years, And I've spent a lot of my time. My husband used to run City Studio, the movie theater at Trinity College, and that's where I spent most of my weekend. So I'm really interested in this topic, not just from a professional point of view, but also from a personal point of view. And I want to start out this presentation I presented for a group in Boise, Idaho. And I thought it would be useful to use this as a basis because it's useful to look at this dispassionate as if we are looking at at another city. And in that presentation, I asked people, which city is this? And obviously, you can tell which city this is. But the other question I asked, does this city have enough parking? All the red is parking. And then I asked, which city is this? And obviously, also, this is Hartford. And you can see the difference between the two. And then the question is, one second, let me just get rid of this tab. The same question, does this place have enough parking? Really, I think it's important to contemplate these two places and what has happened that has turned this image of Hartford into this image. And really looking at it from the perspective, one versus the other, how does one stack up to the other? How does it stack up from an environmental, social, economic point of view? When is enough enough? And what is the cost of having too much? And that's the type of things that we have studied over the last 15 years, using Hartford as a base for that study. And then the third question, and it goes to the heart of what we're doing today, is this image of Hartford, did it happen accidentally? Was it inevitable? Or was it policy? It might have been policy that was unintentional, but was it policy or was it accidental? And that's what I'm going to try to answer with the rest of the presentation. So let's look again at this image. This is Hartford in 1957. This is Hartford today. You could say we did this mapping in 2009. It hasn't changed much since then. What we found was that over the intervening 50, 60 years, parking in Hartford tripled, going from 16,000 to 47,000 spaces. And you say, okay, a lot of things have changed. Fine. So the question is, how are these two places different? What would justify tripling the amount of space in Hartford? So if we look at Hartford in 1957, 16,000 parking spaces, 47 now. Population was 180. Now we have 120. There were no changes in jobs in the city. And 50 years ago, we had 4 major department stores in the city. Now we have none. We have almost no retail. We have some retail, we have almost no retail. So if you look at this image, what you see is a city which is it's a good fraction of the city is parking, 22% of the land area, and a good fraction of what is in the city is about parking. And we really need to ask ourselves, is this what we were trying to create, or what the people before us were trying to create in the policies that they developed? And it's not just Hartford. We looked at cities around the country, and what we found was that cities with lots of parking had much less people working, people living. And so it's really a theme for cities all around the country. And we can look at some of what has happened in terms of how we've changed the fabric. And I'll just go through this quickly since I'm getting very close to my time already. But one of the things we have done is compare how cities have changed. And these are the groups of cities that we're looking at. In one set of cities, we see that parking has actually decreased. In another set of cities, which includes Hartford and New Haven, parking has gone overboard. And if we compare other things about these two cities, so the amount of parking, we compare how people get to work, we see that in some set of American cities, less people are getting to work now compared to places like Hartford. And the question there is it, which is a horse and which is a carriage? Which comes first? If we look at the density of people in the city, the ones which had the low growth in parking saw a great increase in the number of people. Exact opposite. So one of the things we get told is that you can't compare Cambridge to Hartford. The interesting thing is looking at what Cambridge was like in 1960. It looked very much like Hartford. The difference in the intervening years is how they treated things like transportation, like parking. And that's part of what this discussion is about. Per capita income, I don't have time to really go into the details of this, but this is about how we do transportation planning, and parking is part of that. This idea that we have more people are expected to come into the city, so we need to build more parking. And that is what has led to the increase in parking. But the question is the parking leading to more driving? And what we found is exactly that. And we had to use a methodology that was developed by a doctor who had to confront the same question. Is smoking causing cancer? In the 60s, that was denied. And we used the exact same method that you use to ask the question, is more parking causing more driving? And we found that, without a doubt, that was exactly the case, that more parking led to more driving. So the question is, how do we start to address this? One of the ways that we start to address this, and this is from the Hartford Current editorial based on our research, it talks about how surface parking is taxed at a much lower rate than commercial buildings. And what we see in a place like Cambridge is exactly the opposite. The garages are taxed and they support lower rates of taxation for residents and for commercial buildings. And I see this as part of correcting, I see this legislation as part of correcting these issues. So I don't think I should go further given the time limitations. So what do you say, Speaker?
Sure. Are you finished, or can you wrap it up?
But I could wrap it up here if that's what you would prefer.
Yeah, I would like to open it up to if any of the committee members has questions for you.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing.
Any questions from the committee members?
Yes, Council
Chair, I have.
Councilwoman.
Oh, go ahead,
Okay,
Councilman Sanchez.
Councilman, let me start with Councilman Mitchum, and then after you,
Oh.
Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Professor Garrick, a question. One of the pushback that we've heard from parking operators and from the business district downtown, and I expect we'll hear tonight, is that if we cut into parking at all, what we have now, or we make it more expensive, we will drive out the businesses that are downtown and keep new businesses from coming to downtown. And I mean, you've talked a lot about comparing other cities. Do data or comparisons to other cities tell us anything about that argument?
It tells us that I know of no incident in which that has happened. We can look at examples from the East Coast. We can look at Cambridge. Cambridge is a booming city, and they have very stringent parking. We can look at Philadelphia, which is the city that is most recently put limits on parking. And they have gone from a dead downtown to one of the most thriving downtown in the Northeast. We can look at Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. looked like Hartford downtown. And you go there today and you would not understand that it was something totally different 20 years ago. And I can keep on. I can go to Europe. I can talk about places like Zurich, like Amsterdam. All of those places have had a turn up once they've started treating transportation in a more deliberate way. Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, all of those places are places, Chicago, Illinois, all of those places I would point to.
Councilman Mitchell, are you finished? Councilman Sanchez.
Good evening, Dr. Garrett. Thank you for your presentation. My first question is, how much longer is this presentation, if you were to go ahead, move ahead with it?
It's about I was about halfway through.
Halfway through, so you say another 15 minutes?
I would say that, yes.
And through your chair, I would like to hear the rest of the presentation if we can give us the opportunity to hear this. I feel that this conversation and this item on the agenda is extremely important. It affects the city of Hartford, it affects our community, and most importantly, it also affects our small businesses in downtown. And I feel that so far, I really appreciate the presentation, and I find it extremely interesting, especially when you show us the maps and how the parking situation has taken over a good portion of the city.
Let me see if there's any other questions first, Councilman Sanchez, because do be aware that we have another committee meeting at 6:30. So let's see if there's any other any other committee members have any questions? Seeing none, I've got one question for you, Dr. Garrett. Thank you very much for the short presentation. We apologize with our timing this evening. In the cities that you've studied, what sort of transportation does those cities has? Because we know in Connecticut, our transportation is not like New York or Washington, D.C., that people can get around.
Well, let me address the question of what transportation is like in Hartford by talking about one particular company in Hartford, Connecticut, the Travelers. The Travelers has very progressive policies about encouraging their workers to use means of transportation other than cars. And the result is, so they don't, for example, they don't provide free parking like the city does or the state does. They give incentive, a travel incentive for everybody, so they don't discriminate and give drivers a different set of incentives that other people are not eligible to receive. What that does is that the Travelers has a much higher percentage of people using transit, walking and biking into the town than, in fact, 3 times more than the city employees or state of Connecticut employees. So Hartford has a fairly robust transit system compared to a lot of places, and I know it well because since I got transit out here, I have been using transit to get to Hartford, the 913, and it has changed my relationship with businesses in Hartford because now I have a Hartford barber on Pratt Street. I go to the Russell for dinner. So the idea that we don't have transit is really, I think it's something that I'll call in question. It's maybe not where it should be, but it's very strong compared to most places, even places like Portland, Oregon, which I've mentioned before.
So basically, our public transportation is not the most robust, especially, coming into the capital city, which is Hartford.
Yes.
But out of all your research, you only have one organization who has actually given incentives.
No, it's
to
not
do
just
so.
one. Aetna does it also. We did a very small study years ago with an intern, and we looked at, I think, 6 places. Aetna does, Travelers does, and what's interesting is that they're doing it in the face of the fact that the city is not really friendly to what they're doing, but they have done it from the point of view of understanding both the environmental and the cost implication of having sensible transportation policy.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Um, Dr. Garrett, the only thing I may suggest is if there's any way you can possibly share with us the remaining of your presentation,
I certainly will do that if you
would
yes.
that be helpful to you, Councilman Sanchez?
Yes, absolutely. So if we're going to move in that direction, Councilwoman Chair, I do have a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
So Dr. Garrett, I've been on the phone all day, text, emails, because of this resolution and the change of ordinance and adding the 25 cents per vehicle, per hour, per parking.
Yes.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that 25 cents, I'm not sure if you've done a study on cost,
yes,
but would it be fair to say that after 18 years of no increase, that 25 cents is very nominal to where we should be charging?
it's very nominal. It's almost nothing when you look at the impact of people driving into the city. Yes, I agree with that statement.
And
it's
now,
also nominal in terms of what it's going to do in terms of shifting the needle. So yes, I think it's a start, but it's a nominal start.
all right, and then the other concern, I did get a couple of calls from some business owners in downtown, specifically from Pratt Street. And I'm not sure if they're being given the wrong information, but it's almost as if they're very concerned that they're going to lose customers because of this 25-cent increase. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I shop a lot on Pratt, including at the stock polls. And I have never had a problem parking in Hartford. Usually I parked on the street. If people are going to park in the garage, I cannot see that that's going to be an obstacle to you to go into those businesses.
Now, my other question is, do you feel that this 25-cent increase, obviously I feel it's going to benefit the city when it comes to the revenue, but I also feel that this is also beneficial to our communities on the outskirts of downtown. Have you done a study of that type?
Well,
how does it affect our surrounding community, neighborhoods?
Well, I mentioned the case of Cambridge, which uses the parking revenue, the parking tax to benefit the communities rather than to benefit having more parking. But in our study, one of the things we looked at was the land on which parking stands now. If some of that land or much of that land was to be converted to productive use, the amount of money you are foregoing right now is upwards of $20 million per year from downtown. And one of the images I have that I didn't get to is how a city like Bridgeport looks like and why a city like that would be bankrupt, because it has converted itself to such an extent to parking that the downtown cannot provide the revenues needed to keep a city going. And I think to some extent that is true in Hartford, is that so much of what we have in downtown, so what we have done is we have turned downtown into an office park with the idea that it was going to compete with the suburbs. It cannot compete with the suburbs unless we go even further. So the idea that we're going to lose business to the suburbs, places want to be in Hartford because it is not the suburbs. Hartford has other things that makes it competitive, not parking. It cannot compete on parking. And that's what we find in cities all over the world, all over the country.
Thank you.
Just one question for you also, Dr. Garrett, again for me. What is the vacancy rate like in Cambridge? And also, one question. The second question is, most of our development for downtown Hartford has been subsidized over the last several decades.
Yes.
How are those development in those other areas, developed? Because as I said, most of our, we've got lots of housing online currently going downtown. If you said you lived in Hartford for several years, we had a lot of shopping downtown, G Fox, Jennings, us back in the days, to tell you how old I am. A lot of those businesses have, now everyone drives to the mall. So we don't really have that sort of mixed use like we used to in Hartford. How does that compare to other cities and other towns like Cambridge, as an example?
Yeah, so that's exactly the point I'm trying to make, is that we think that these forces that have happened in Hartford are things that have just happened. But what it seems to me, based on my research, is that you can go to places like Portland, like Seattle, like Cambridge, like Washington, like Philadelphia, like New York City. All of those places have had a different approach to transportation and to parking. And those are the places that still have downtown housing, that still have downtown retail. All of those places do. In comparison, we can look at places like Buffalo, Cleveland, that are more like Hartford, that have carved out their centers to try to compete with the suburbs. Those are the places that are in the same kind of status that we are, where we're seeing things fleeing to the suburb. So this idea that we're competing with the suburb is part of what I think has killed downtown Hartford as a viable place.
And so you would say that took many, many decades to happen.
It took many decades to happen. When I came here in 1986, G Fox was still downtown. But you could see the trend in which it was going. In 1989, the first skyscraper was taken down and is now a parking lot. So you can see over time all of these things happening.
Right. Well, Dr. Garrett, that was an eye-opening presentation. Again, if you could share the remaining of your presentation with us, that'd be great. I would really appreciate it. Finish looking at that information. Do we have any other questions from other council members? Councilman Sanchez.
Yes, through you, Chair. I do have some question, but I'd like to hear what the audience has to say before I chime in again.
Okay.
Because I've been on the phone all day with so many different people, and I think I may have a solution at the end.
Okay. All right. Dr. Garrett, thank you so very much for your time.
Surgeon, if I may, Councilman Mitchum has had his hand up. I don't know.
I'm so sorry, Councilman Mitchum. I didn't see you. I apologize. That small screen here. Go ahead, sir.
Not a problem. Just very briefly, I heard Councilman Sanchez during his question talk about 25 cents per car per hour, which I think that was just a mistake. My understanding is it's 25 cents per car per day.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify as we go forward with this conversation.
Thank you.
All right.
And if I may, Madam Chair, just to take that one step further, it's $62.50 per year per parking space. And so you can break that down. If you break it down to 25 cents a day, you're only using 250 days in a year. So, but the actual total amount per parking space per year of the ordinance change would be to add $62.50 to each parking space. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Garrett, again, thank you so very much for your time. And please, stay with us if you would like to hear the rest of the committee meeting. We have up next, we have Mr. Sorrellis. Or is
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, there you go, Tony. Great.
Hi, Anthony Schrolis here. I am over here at the Transport Hartford Academy and at the Center for Latino Progress. And we work on multimodal transportation, sustainable development, transit-oriented development, mobility, and environmental justice. There are so many different ways that I could talk about this subject. I guess from a historical sense, we proposed it as part of what the Center for Latino Progress and our transportation programs were working on back in 2016. And I wrote an article about the undervaluation and the undervaluation of our parking in the city, both surface lots and garages, and the inability of the city to actually invest in itself relative to the maintenance and infrastructure improvements that those the heavy usage of our public land for in private ownership for parking uses. So the our streets get used by the vehicles on going to and using this commercial parking, causing wear and tear, causing air pollution, causing greenhouse gas emissions, causing disparate health impacts, and contributing to our city's high percentage of asthma rate and respiratory illness, concentrating those pollution, motor vehicle pollution in our city, much more than the suburbs where most of the parking, low occupancy vehicle parking consumers are coming from. 66%, or communities of color in the Northeast bring 66% more motor vehicle pollution than their less diverse suburban neighbors. That has translated into disparate, severe, and fatal outcomes from the COVID pandemic. So that existing public health crisis has been amplified by our current pandemic. So we don't want to forget that there are far-reaching externalities to our transportation system that go beyond just land use and development. But I really appreciate what Professor Garrick, Dr. Garrick, provided, and I appreciate reading the papers he's involved with and the papers and articles from those in that field. And it does embarrass me as a Hartford resident, as a Hartford homeowner, as a Hartford landlord, as a manager of a small business, and a transportation and development expert, where we're at and what we've been doing. I am proud of what the city's been doing relative to our zoning policies and our plans. As someone who works on trying to move the city forward in a equitable, just, and environmentally vibrant way, where we really get frustrated is we have stacks of plans, stacks and stacks and stacks of plans, and we have the constant response is no funds, right? The city has no funds to invest in itself. The only funds we can, it seems we can bring to the table are when we, beg, borrow, and steal from state and federal monies, and we have very little in the city's coffers for proactive maintenance programs and proactive infrastructure development that is driven by the city's priorities. When I hear from DPW what their budget is for just painting and striping and replacing signs, it is absurd. It is like the budget for a small, rural town is the painting, striping, and sign budget in previous years from DPW. And one of the reasons we have such a low budget is the low return on some of this land use, the very same land use and users that are putting the wear and tear on the things we don't have the money to maintain. So I think that the proposal is, from a consumer impact, insignificant. I put in the chat a link to a release, an article talking about the Hartford Parking Authority doubling hourly rates from $1 to $2 an hour in the downtown district. hourly rates doubled in 2019. We're talking about a quarter a day when pushed to the consumer's daily transportation budget. That is an absolutely insignificant impact on driver behavior. It even in year 2030, as proposed in the ordinance change, if as that goes up to $1 a day per parking space, in 2030 with inflation, it's still going to be an insignificant dollar amount. People spend 3 times that on their coffee in the morning. Most of the folks I know driving in the suburbs wouldn't bend down to pick up a quarter. So I'm going to just stop there I think it's an important change.
Thank you, Tony. Great. Tony, thank you. We have had your presentation in the last couple committee meetings before. So because we have a full agenda and time is against us, if the council members don't mind having the other speakers do their presentation and answering the questions, that'd be great. The first person we have who would like to say something is Mr. Lazowski, who's the chair and CEO of Last Parking.
Thank you.
Is he on the committee?
Yes. I don't know if you see me here.
Oh, there you go. Right. Yep, we see you. Speak a little bit louder, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Sturgeon, and thank you to all the council members, and thank you for everybody getting together.
Okay. Mr. Lazowski, we can barely hear you. You need to speak a little bit louder.
Apologize for that. Can you hear me okay now?
A little bit. No, a little bit more.
Okay. I'm sorry. Is that any better?
Yes.
Yep, that's better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for everyone for making the time for this meeting. Professor Garrick, thank you for your presentation. I really look forward to getting a copy of that and having a robust discussion around that. LAS operates 1.3 million parking spaces in 420 cities across the United States, including those cities that you mentioned, and Cambridge and Washington, D.C. We happen to be one of the largest operators in those cities, along with my colleague, who happens to be on the phone from ProPark, Rick DiPietro. And I can tell you firsthand that it is not a fair comparison to compare Hartford, Connecticut to Cambridge, Massachusetts, or Washington, D.C. with regards to transportation and commercial activity. One reason is the rates that people get in rents are $40, $50, $60 per foot for commercial space in those cities. And we would love to build on every surface parking lot in Hartford, but it's not economically feasible based on the rents that we get. Also, the transportation system really isn't something that also can be compared for people commuting into the city with the same ease like Washington area Metro and the MBTA in Boston and the other transit systems. So I would love to have a wonderful, robust discussion with you and share some of our data as well with regards to how our city is much different. One thing I just want to make the committee aware of is that for every surface parking lot that we own or manage on behalf of owners and developers, please rest assured that we have the common goal in mind is to make Hartford a robust, vibrant city. And if we could develop any surface parking lot in downtown tomorrow, we would. The reality is that Hartford cannot develop any commercial business without having subsidy. And I think Hartford has done a fabulous job working with the CRDA, the state of Connecticut, and moving Hartford forward pre-pandemic. I will tell you, when you talk about a 25-cent per day charge, that's not really accurate because there are no cars presently parking in our parking lots. or hardly any cars parking in our parking lots. This 25 cents a day is an added expense to the landlords and owners of these parking facilities in a time when we're trying to hang on and pay the property taxes that are very exorbitant in Hartford to begin with. And there are no cars and people parking in those lots, and you're taking a $1,000 permit fee and raising it by 1,500% and 2,000% in some cases. And this is certainly not the time to do that. I would respectfully request that we work together with the fine people that are on the phone, the retailers, the developers, the brokers, the parking operators, and have a public-private discussion of how we can make the parking infrastructure more usable, more unique, and come up with alternative uses that make sense in today's world. We do need to do a study on a current study, not from 2009, but from 2021, and really look at what our needs are in the city of Hartford today. Let's take every commercial space, every office building, every retail space, and let's look at what our parking needs truly are. I think we will find that we do not have enough parking in certain areas of town that make it easy for commuters. This infrastructure of parking is an essential service. We're deemed an essential service, and we're fighting to keep our essential workers in place right now to pay for our essential workers where we have very little revenue coming in. This is certainly not a time to add another tax to what is already high property taxes. These fees should be looked at, they should be addressed. We can work together and bring everyone together. I understand that the Parking Authority has commissioned a study. Let's wait till the study is done. Let's sit down and think about this together. You have some unbelievable experts in real estate, development, retail, transportation, parking, as that would be willing to sit down in partnership to work this out and to think this through. So my only request is to let us table this idea. Let's gain more knowledge around this. Let's work together to come up with solutions to make our city more livable from a transportation standpoint and from a parking standpoint, and from a more walkable, livable, bikeable city. Thank you for your consideration and time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wadowski. Councilman Mitchum?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Wazowski. When you say, just a few questions, when you say this is not the time, I take it you're saying because of the pandemic?
Correct.
How long has LAS been operating in Hartford?
I'm proud to say that we started our business 40 years ago as valet parkers in Hartford with our single restaurant location in 1981.
And presumably it's maybe not every year, but the great warp and woof of that is it's been a profitable business, which is why you keep up with it.
Well, Josh, this may come as a surprise to you, but if I had to rely on Hartford's business, we'd be out of business. It is not a profitable business. If you want to look at the properties that we bought and the revenue that gets created and the taxes that get paid, we cannot rely on Hartford to be in business.
Are you losing?
I think there's a misnomer about parking in general and parking operators and what gets generated in revenue from parking lots in Hartford versus the cost of buying the properties, leasing the properties, and what actually gets.
Excuse me 1 second. Can everybody please mute their audio? Could everyone please mute your audio? Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Ladowski. Keep going.
No, I just want to point out to Josh, I think that, we operate in 420 cities throughout the United States, and Hartford is our home headquarters. I was born in Hartford, and I live in Hartford, and I'm a taxpayer in Hartford, and I love Hartford. But the economics of parking and we used to get more for a parking space in downtown Hartford in 1986 than we get today.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead. Sorry, Councilman.
sorry. So I just want to be clear. Are you saying that Laz loses money on his parking operations in Hartford? Do you do this for charity?
No, Laz, with all due respect, Laz is very profitable and very successful because of the fact that it's in 35 states and 420 cities. Laz could not be in business just in Hartford.
So let me ask again. You're just losing money being in Hartford, it would be better for the business for you to just leave the parking business in Hartford? Is that what you're telling us?
No, it wouldn't be better for us to leave the parking business in Hartford. It doesn't, the contribution of the parking revenue in Hartford doesn't come close to covering our overhead.
In Hartford.
Correct.
I just want to understand, you're opposing this 25-cent per car per day increase, and now you're telling us that you don't make money on the parking lots. And so I'm trying to understand why you operate them here.
Josh, I'm opposing the 25-cent per charge because it's an additional tax that at this time should not be presented during COVID, and it really is. It's a cost to real estate that really parking operators and owners of parking lots should not be subject to.
Okay, last question, because you said it shouldn't happen during the pandemic. Would you have been fine with it if it were imposed a year ago, or the preceding year, or any of the last 18 years when there's been no increase? Because that's what I understand you to be saying, is that but for that, it would have been fine.
No, that I'm not saying but for that. I'm saying especially now, I think we need to have a discussion of why we need to raise a 25% permit fee from $1,000 a year to $60,000 a year. I don't understand it. And so I'm opposed to an increase in this tax. We already pay $3.4 million in taxes for the Gold Building alone in Hartford. We do not need an extra tax.
What we do
in the background.
Yeah, there's a.
Those are mine. Sorry.
Yeah, somebody's children are really making a lot of noise in the background. Excuse me for interrupting, and it's really hard to concentrate. Is there any way to mute that?
Sorry, I think that was me, and because I was talking, there was nothing to do about it. But now I'm done.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry.
All right. We got a question from Councilman LeBron.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just one question for Mr. Lazowski. How many full-time staff, how many staff do you employ total how many full-time and how many part-time in Hartford?
I believe the number is approximately 450 people in Hartford. I'd have to get the exact number.
What's the percentage in terms of just, we won't hold you to it in terms of full-time versus part-time?
My guess would be 75% full-time and 25% part-time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Councilwoman.
Sorry, Councilwoman Rossetti, go ahead, ma'am.
I have a question, Mr. Lozowski. I'm hearing two very different numbers. I believe you just said something from, what did you just say? $1,000 to Say that again, please. You're on mute, Mr. Lazowski.
Sorry. The present permit fee that is being charged for surface parking lots is $1,000 per year. Based on the schedule and depending on the number of spaces in that lot, it could go anywhere from an increase from $1,000 to $54,000, depending on the size of the lot or the garage. And that increase is astronomical, anywhere from 320% to 2,595%.
Thank you, Mr. Lazowski. I hear what you're saying, but I also would like to know, you're saying, it could go from this to this. Are we saying a percentage? 75% are going to go to that. I'd like to see some numbers or, see some data on that.
Yes, we could share this data with everybody on the screen right now. Can you share it on the screen?
I can share.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon.
You're welcome, ma'am.
This is based on the ordinance as we read it, and we've taken a few lots as examples.
Can you see the screen now?
Yeah.
So let's see, I'll make it a little bigger. These are just some of
A little bit bigger. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so why don't you go? I have my colleague Jane Davey here, and she'll go through that.
Okay, great.
So these are just a sample of the lots that we operate, and we took them under the current fee structure and layered in under the new fee structure. And this is where you'll see it's just simply based on what you have proposed in the ordinance. It caps out at $1,000 now on surface lots. Garages have no permit fee. And then under the new regime, you will see, for example, on our Allen Street lot, we would go from $1,000 to almost $35,000. On an annualized basis, that's an increase of $16,000 or a 1,639% increase. On looking at a garage, for example, the garage at the Gold Building where there's no permit fee now, it would go to $140,000 on a biannual basis or $70,000 a year. So that's the way the code is written, that it is based on the number of spaces, and that's how the assessment is rolled out, not based on a dollar or percent amount per parker that comes in.
And we could share that information with the committee. We could email it to everybody.
So could you also add another column, Jane, of the taxes you pay per these lots?
Yes, I started to add that. I'm not sure if you can see that on my screen right now to estimate what the taxes are for us and various other property owners. But of those properties there, it's close to $19 million in property taxes that are already being paid.
If I could, because I don't know if you can see my hand, Madam Chairwoman.
No, I can't see. Go ahead, sir.
Is there a column that shows us how much money you make for each of these lots, your profits, your income?
No, there isn't. There is not. But I would love to show you some of the economics of that as well.
It would be nice to know not just these numbers, but how this compares to the money you're taking in, because otherwise the numbers are kind of meaningless.
Well, they're not meaningless. This is factual information of the increases that we'd be facing.
But you're a multi-million-dollar corporation. If we don't know how it affects your bottom line, it doesn't really tell us much.
We could give a good example on the Allen Street lot where we're losing a lot of money on a daily basis. And we'd be happy to show you how much money we're losing when we pay our $240,000 of taxes where we have no parkers on the lot right now.
So Jane, if you could add another column, because basically you do file with the city biannually your rates, your rental rates, monthly, weekly, and your special events rates. Is that correct?
The rates, are they filed with, I believe it is
Yes.
filed, yes.
Right. So if you could just add another column with that information, that would show your revenue. Would that be,
It's not,
what are you talking about, Councilman Mitchum?
yeah, that's.
Absolutely. And maybe also if we could see what the revenue is in a non-pandemic year, since you've gone without increases for almost 2 decades that didn't have pandemics in them.
That'd be very helpful.
Josh,
Okay.
want to be my partner in some of these lots and share some of these losses.
Okay. Time is against us, unfortunately. So we are going to have to move this along really fast. So next person would like to speak was Michael Seidenfeld.
Yes, hi. Due to the, first of all, thank you, everybody, but due to the time constraint, I'm going to give my time to my other colleagues in Shelbourne. So I'm going to pass. Thank you.
And who will that be?
Chairwoman Rossetti, I don't know if you saw Councilwoman Wildelise Bermudez has a question. She put
No,
it in the chat.
Unfortunately, no, I didn't. I was looking at the screen. Councilman Bermudez, are you still on? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Okay, there you go. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question before our next speaker? I apologize, I did not, I was looking at my chat.
I'm having problems with my video, so my apologies. But yeah, so I had two questions. So if we're looking at other Connecticut cities, hold on, baby. Shh. If we're looking at other Connecticut cities, New Haven has already instituted a similar ordinance. We've had it on the books for some time now. But my question is, you mentioned, Mr. Laws, that there's 420 cities that you're established in. You have parking lots in, and you said something about 35 different states. And so I was wondering, of those cities, which ones had something comparable where they're charging a parking lot fee?
We got lots of new council people tonight.
Is you on mute?
Yeah, you're on.
Yes. Hi. I don't have that information on my fingertips, but there are a number of cities that, have different sales tax on parking. Some have permit fees, some don't have permit fees. We could probably get sort of, probably as part of some research, we can look at, comparable cities and see what they do. I do recommend that we actually do a comprehensive study that helps give people accurate information of what some other cities are doing and how people approach things. And we'd be glad to participate in that.
Councilman Bermudez?
Okay, thank
you. Okay. I think Mr. Seidenfeld said he's going to pass it on to his partner. And who would that be, sir?
So you could just continue on the list of people who've been scheduled to speak.
Okay. We have David Griggs. David Griggs?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Go right ahead, David. Welcome.
And thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for the opportunity to speak this evening. Just to be clear, while I know Michael and have tremendous respect for him, I don't work for him. I am with Metro Hartford Alliance, and just wanted to be clear on that. Okay. And I'd also like to thank Alan Lazowski for hosting your business here in Hartford. You are in many states around our country, and you obviously have an option on where you headquarter your business. So thank you for the 400 plus people that you employ here in the city of Hartford and for your investments here in Hartford.
Thank you.
And the purpose of this proposed ordinance to spur development in our downtown core is central to what the Metro Hartford Alliance is looking for, and the Hartford Chamber of Commerce, who's under our umbrella. So on the surface, we have a common point where we can agree on. We want development in our downtown core. The question is this the way to spur it? Is this the way that we can make that development happen? And from my perspective, and we are out there on the streets talking to businesses here in our region and around the country, we are competing on a national scale to bring new business to our region. We need to be as cost competitive as we can be every step of the way. Creating an additional barrier, however minor, is not what we need to do to be more cost competitive. Now, I've also heard that this tax or this fee would be passed on to the folks who are driving in, right? A commuter tax, let's call it. At a time when our downtown is struggling, and we all hear it every day from our restaurants to our retail, we need to do everything we can to encourage all of those commuters to come back to the office. They're working from home today. Our businesses are doing quite well with their people working from home. We need to find ways to incentivize those people to come back into our downtown core, not to disincentivize. Additionally, we have to start thinking of our downtown as a neighborhood. There are residents of Hartford. And because our downtown is still growing and we don't have all the services that a neighborhood needs, many of those residents have a car. Again, we have to encourage people to live in downtown Hartford. And those costs would be borne not by commuters, but by residents. So again, I don't want to take up too much time. I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak, but I encourage the council to consider long and hard the impacts and what we're really trying to address here, which is development, which we all agree on, we all want. It's just the process by which we get there. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. So, I know the council members may have questions, but due to time, can we just get some of the presentation done, and maybe we can ask the question or send the questions to the presenter. Next person we have up is Jane Yana.
Hello there. How are you?
Hi, Jane. Welcome.
Hello. So my name is Jane Young, and my parents own Sunbury Restaurant on Pratt Street. Corona has been a huge hit to the restaurant business, and we are barely surviving in downtown Hartford. Our customer base are people who work downtown, and a lot of these employees are working from home. So we have lost almost 70% of our profit since COVID-19. We are barely surviving. Restaurants have gone out of business on our street alone. And if this new parking increases parking costs, I'm afraid that would influence the employees from coming downtown. We're trying to make ends meet right now, and it's the very few employees, and I mean very few, that are coming downtown decide not to because parking is too expensive, then we will have absolutely nothing. We will have no business and we will go bankrupt. I think timing is crucial in all of this. You know, a good idea can't be implemented with right timing. And right now is a tough time to make changes because small businesses are so fragile. So that was my only real concern about this ordinance. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everyone at the meeting.
Jane, thank you so very much for letting us know how things are going with the business downtown. So, and thank you very much for joining us. The next person we have up to talk is Jody Nornault. Hope I'm not butchering somebody's name. Is
That's
Jody
okay.
on the line?
Jody Morneau.
Morneau. Thank you so very much for understanding, and I apologize for butchering your name. Jody, you're a business owner, and you want us to address the committee?
Yes, and I thank you very much for having me as a speaker. I want to applaud Alan Lazowski for articulating really what happens. It's not about 25 cents. It's really about how desolate and how dead and how our downtown is crumbling at the seams. Our downtown is in a state that I've never seen it. I live downtown, I own a commercial building downtown, and I own Stagpole Moore Tryon downtown that's been in business for 111 years. I'm not quite sure where anybody could think of that cars are driving in and out of our city. There are no cars driving in and out of our city. There is no traffic in our city. My downtown business, which is 10,000 square feet, is down 90%. I have personally not taken a paycheck in the same way that Jane from Sunbury, Cirella's, all the restaurants in the downtown are living on savings to keep those doors open. We have one business that I believe that's successful in the fact that she was smart enough to have an online business, which is Hartford Prince. And Harvey and Lewis is doing okay because he's able to have welfare people come into his business and they get free glasses. This would be so hurtful and so detrimental to our downtown, which is already on ICU. Every single day another business closes. The city made these decisions to tear down these buildings a long time ago. We cannot compare our city to any other city that the gentleman spoke about. Our downtown has never been marketed it. Nobody ever spent any money marketing us as a destination for tourism. No one ever gave us the proper police in our downtown. We don't even have police officers dedicated to our downtown. I recently got a cop maybe 12 weeks ago that was a beat officer after begging and crying for years that we needed a police officer because it's so unsafe in the downtown. This is why our residents do not leave the buildings. They get in their cars and they drive to West Hartford Center and Glastonbury and everywhere. They do not support the businesses that are in the downtown. We desperately need those corporations to bring their businesses back to the core. And if the people do not come back to the core and pay for parking that's affordable, we will lose that as well. I pitched Kerry Saxon Perry years ago with the city council back then. I'm not going to mention any names. I begged the council back then not to triple the taxes. Back at those times, we had 230 small businesses. I had started business for downtown Hartford. We had a viable downtown. Our downtown has deteriorated to the point that the Federal Credit Union next to my store has closed because homeless people have broken into that location and damaged the ATM machines so many times that they gave up. Our Dunkin' Donuts downtown next to my store is closed. I can't even buy a cup of coffee. I have to have a Keurig in my store, or if I can get the time to run up to the street to Sunbury and get my coffee. And I'm thankful that they can deliver a lunch to me. I try to support my businesses that are down there, and I spend most of my time crying every day because everybody keeps going out of business. And to think that we can actually take more money out of our core downtown to spread it anywhere else is very hurtful. We do not have any police. We pay for our own clean and safe through the bid program. We do not get free garbage pickup. We do not get any services from the city, but we're asked to pay an exorbitant amount of taxes. I live at the Bushnell Tower. My taxes are to the moon. My commercial property on the corner of Ann and Asylum, my taxes are to the moon. And it's hurtful to think that you're going to now allow another tax that would hurt our businesses that much further. And I'm almost ready to close my business if things don't turn around in that downtown. This would be the worst possible move ever.
Okay, Ms. Renat. Okay, great. Thank you so very much. I apologize, but time is against us.
But I had to make my point because
yes, ma'am.
I live there. I work there,
Great.
and I walk the streets. And my friends have lost their businesses, and this is the worst thing that would ever happen.
Great. Thank you so very much for presenting to us. We only have two other presenter, Rick DePietro and Brandon Fox.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee. Thank you very much. Most everything has been said out of respect for everyone's time. I would just like to say on behalf of ProPark, who's had our corporate offices here for the last 35 years in Hartford, that we don't think that this is necessarily the best time for this. It's seemingly a very high fee and a very difficult time for everyone, every business. And we would urge, and out of respect, or in due respect, we would urge that we get a group together with the city council, with this committee, and talk about those things Al Lazowski has mentioned, and that the other folks have mentioned as well, and come up with a plan that may be better suited and better timed. And we would ask your consideration in that regard at this point. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Madam Chair and committee, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DePietro. One last presentator. We have David and Ben Salzberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are you there?
We are here. Can you hear us?
There you go. I'm sorry, Mr. Schlossberg. Go right ahead, sir.
Here with Mr. Schlossberg and with Michael Seidenfeld and Bernard Bertram of Shelbourne. Thank you all for your time.
Oh, okay, sir.
I'm going to try to be brief. I've had some very animated and very good discussions with Councilman Gale on this issue. I'm not here to regurgitate what anyone said, just to make a couple of points. Professor Garrick has done a study, and the study should be updated as asked before. But I think one of the things that has to really be defined is what area are we talking about when we talk about the downtown, and what area are we talking about when we talk about cars. What parking lots are we talking about? So I'm going to share a couple of slides, and unfortunately we didn't see the presentation in advance. It's a wonderful presentation, but here's a fact. 1 second, let me share this. Give me a second. I'm too old for technology, but there we go. Okay.
Okay.
And if you speak to the people at the bid, at the Metro Alliance, at the City Development Office, at CRDA, I think the facts here are very important and to define what we're talking about. In good times, and again, we should talk about good times, what's going on in COVID, there is nothing that anyone can do right now as far as this goes to make things better for the businesses. From our point of view, we've tried to do as much as we can, and people have spoken before. Our tenants on Pratt Street, our tenants in the city, and other tenants in the city have really gotten together. We're trying to all figure out how to combat this. But let's look at the numbers before COVID. There are more than 40,000 daytime workers that come into the city. And it may be true, as mentioned before, maybe there were bad decisions made, but the fact is that you have 40,000 plus people coming into the downtown, and they need a way to get into the downtown. And if you look a little deeper, and we'd love to see the data behind Professor Garrick's great work, the data has to be supporting the fact that there is transportation for a good number of those kind of workers. There are 1 million annual visitors to Bushnell Park. 440 annual visitors to the Excellence Center, 406,000 attendees at Duncan Park, a baseball park, 353 visitors to the convention center, 1,000 visitors to the convention center, 338,000 visitors to the Science Center, 13,500 to the Infinity Theater. And then you have all the businesses, retail businesses, small businesses, larger businesses, the state, the city, the large corporations, the small corporations occupying office space. There are a total of 23,000 parking spaces in the Hartford Central Business District. And here is where Professor Garrick, who's done this job, and it's, I imagine, and I assume that this study was done for a reason, but these red dots that show the proliferation of parking, and if you look at it, and you see the green right in the middle of the park, Bushdale, right? These parking spots below, to the left, above, they're not defining the parking available in the downtown. There are maybe there's 47,000 spots in the city of Hartford. There are not 47,000 spots in the downtown that can service the needs of the retail, the office, the residential, the government that is downtown. And this is why we need more time to look at what the defined areas of downtown are, the different areas in the CBD, and with the Hartford Parking Authority study, to be able to compare notes with you and to work with you. Again, we're in the real estate business, and Mr. Josh is right. We should be making a profit. We want to make a profit, otherwise we wouldn't be in business. It's not our sole motive. We try to do some good things in the city collectively and work with people, but you could not make a development in the city work right now. We are developing in the city. We are struggling to develop in the city, and so are the other developers in the city. And to say that we're going to convert parking lots, as Mr. Zalowski and others said, we'd love to convert parking lots to apartment buildings, to multifamily. It would be wonderful. It just doesn't work right now. And so we'd like to see the data that Professor Garrick has provided. We'd love to look at the New Haven legislation and regulations. We've looked for them. We have not found them. We're not aware of those and how they work. We'd love to be provided that information. We'd love to see the information have 22% of the land in the city of Hartford. Again, this may be a definitional issue, but you're looking at the CBD. We'd love to work with all the stakeholders to bring more investment into the city, to bring more housing into the city, to better the transportation and the environment in the city, and to make the city the great city that it could be. Philadelphia, just to leave you with a thought, as it was mentioned before, Philadelphia, which is a city that we are very, very familiar with for 40 years. Parking rates in the downtown are $44 a day, average. Average parking rates in the city of Hartford are $7 a day. And that's if your lots are full. So again, we're very happy to be part of a process to get to the bottom of the facts, to work with everybody, to come up with something that's equitable and that makes sense and works to rebuild Hartford. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Slashberg. And that is the end of our presentation. Basically what we would ask, members of the committee, if you would stop sharing your screen, that'd be great.
I apologize again, my age is
okay. I know. Now, believe me, I'm learning from my 13-year-old grandson too, so no problem. Yeah.
There we go.
Great, we're back. Oh, wonderful, excellent. Councilman Sanchez, I see your raise of hand.
I know we're tight for time and we're running late for the OMB.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion with a friendly amendment, that we extend the timeline of when this will start to be effective later on this year if Councilman Gale will entertain such an amendment.
Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be happy to entertain an amendment to the ordinance. I would, however, ask for one indulgence, Madam Chair, before we move forward on the amendment that I will second, and that is I would like to give Professor Garrick, who's hung in with us all evening, at least 2 minutes to give us some feedback on the various comments that he heard, if he's willing. I don't want to put you on the spot there, Dr. Garrick, but if you're willing, I would greatly appreciate hearing some of your feedback.
Councilman Gale, and in due respect, we are at least, we have 10 more minutes. We're half an hour over of our time. Give me 1 second, Councilman Mitchum. And so I know most of the members of the committee here are also on the OMB committee. So if you will indulge Professor Garrick to make a 2-minute presentation, and then we can go into the vote. Members?
Madam Chairman, can I jump in, because this is relevant to this whole timing question? Sure. Just with I wonder if it would make sense, because it seems like there's still a lot to hash out and we're running late.
Yes.
We could just put this whole question over to the next meeting of this committee. And then we would maybe not be so pressed, and we could get into all the motions and all of that rather than rush. Maybe not give it the attention it's due.
I will second that, Councilman Mitchum. And
Madam Chair, with all due respect, Professor Garrick is here. Can we just?
Oh, no, that part, yes.
No, Councilman Gale, give me a minute, please. Councilman Mitchum, I totally agree with you. Any action from the committee could be postponed to another committee meeting, because we don't have, or we can do a special committee meeting, because any action tonight would not get on the 11th agenda.
So to Councilman Gale, that's what I meant to say. Still exactly. Professor Garrick, but then to spin it out.
Any action for the committee can be postponed for a special committee meeting, so we can discuss how we want to address the ordinance, because again, it will not be on the Monday, November the 11th council meeting. So we do have time for Professor Garrick to do his 2 seconds. It's 6:52, and then we will call the committee meeting to close and do a special committee meeting for action. Is that amendable to the members? Councilman Gale.
Absolutely not, Madam Chair. I have heard Councilman Sanchez's motion, and I seconded it, and I would like us to vote on a motion to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation. And we'll certainly have time before council meets to determine this, to receive other information. But we've spent this evening doing it. And I think the time right now is to send this back to council. It's been on our agenda for more than 3 months at this point in time, going on 4. So I'm not sure that there's anything to be gained by any particular delay. I would, however, ask the indulgence, and I think all council members would probably agree that we should spend the next couple of minutes listening to Professor Garrick respond to the comments while they're fresh in our minds.
Councilman Gale, the more you're talking, the more time is going. Councilman Mitchum.
I just want to be clear that I think I didn't understand the motion from Councilman Sanchez, and it's not that I want to draw this out needlessly, but I thought I heard Councilman Sanchez say that his motion was to delay implementation, but he didn't say to what date.
Later on.
Councilman Sanchez.
Through you, Chair. So my motion is to delay the implementation to, I would say October 1st or to the January 1st of next year. And by doing so, this gives us all an opportunity to create maybe a task force with Dr. Garrett and Mr. Lazowski and everyone else, so that we can sit at the table and figure out how are we going to move forward with this, because I do support the 25-cent increase. I do support that. But I also support the businesses in downtown.
Councilman Sanchez, we have limited time. The motion on the floor is to delay the actual implementation of the ordinance until January 2022. Is that what you're saying?
Either October or January 1st of 2022, right?
So which one are you seconding, Councilman Gale?
Just to be clear, and Councilman Sanchez, you correct me if I'm wrong. Your motion is to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation on the provision that at council, it will be amended so that it's passed with an implementation date, a date when it actually goes into effect, of either October 1st or January 1st, 2022.
Correct. And I'd like to just add one more thing. During that time, prior to the implementation, I feel that after the study that the Hartford Parking Authority completes, if there's some changes that we can apply, whether reducing it or keeping it the same, I think we have the opportunity to revisit this resolution and the change of the ordinance.
Okay, so we have a motion, it has been seconded. And the motion, again, I just give myself a note, is to send the ordinance back to the council favorable with a implementation date of January 2022.
Correct.
Is that correct?
I will second that motion.
Councilman Mitchum, any discussion? We've got a motion is seconded. Any discussion? Councilman Mitchum.
Only to say that I misunderstood Councilman Sanchez's initial motion, and as far as my suggestion that we put it over to discuss it more, if that was a motion, I withdraw that motion. I'm fine. I mean, in terms of not voting now, I withdraw that motion. I misunderstood Sanchez's motion. I'm all good.
So there's a motion on the floor. Let's vote in that. Council President Rosado.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
Yes.
Councilman Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilwoman Bermudez.
Yes.
Councilman Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
And the chairperson is going to abstain. So the motion passed to be favorably sent back to the council. It will not be on the January 11th council meeting because we have passed our agenda deadline. So the report will say that the report will say that this is a favorable recommendation to council with a implementation deadline of January 2022. I'm good. Yes, Councilman Sanchez.
Yes, and if it's possible, can we possibly put in, through you, Chair, a resolution to create a task force so that we can all start having this conversation at the table? I'd like to invite Dr. Garrett and anyone else, because now it gives us an opportunity to really look this over prior to the implementation.
Okay, so that will be a resolution you can put in for a council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Gale.
I would still want to give Dr. Garrett 2 minutes to speak to us.
Okay, well, it's 6:58, and we have been at this since 5:30. I think we can certainly invite Dr. Garrett to come back and talk to us at our next council meeting, because with the resolution that Councilman Sanchez is going to put in to do a joint meeting with the members of the business community. So I am going to actually call the committee meeting to a close because we have to get ready. Unfortunately, Dr. Garrett, please understand, my apologies, sir, no disrespect to you, but we're on a time deadline and we have to go into another committee meeting, which we're half an hour late for. We will have another committee meeting. We can have a special committee meeting when councilmen put the resolution in to do a joint meeting task force with the business community to take a look at this ordinance, because I also have lots more questions on the ordinance. And so I really have lots more questions on the ordinance. I would have wanted to see a feasibility study being done. I've always, and the timing was not the greatest timing with the pandemic. So I am going to take the privilege of being the chair to call the meeting to close, and we're going to sign back on in the next minute for our special OMB committee meeting. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I'm calling the committee meeting to close.
Thank you, Dr. Garrett, and everyone.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much.